The ongoing unrest in the Middle East has been a major talking point in the past few weeks. This Israeli conflict has now seen the United States increase its presence in the region by sending one of its most dangerous weapons to the region. And this weapon, a squadron of A-10 Thunderbolt II fighter jets, has been a sight to behold in action ever since it was caught on camera. What's so special about this aircraft? Why is it necessary in the region? Amid the continuing war in the Middle East, the Pentagon has been working tirelessly to prevent the growing confrontation from setting off a wider regional conflict. The horrible clashes that have killed thousands of people and left entire generations living under occupation over several decades grew worse on October 7th. On the said date, launched an unprecedented attack on Israel, infiltrating communities close to with hundreds of gunmen. Over 1,400 Israelis lost their lives in the tragic incident, and according to the Israeli military, over 220 troops and civilians, including women and children, were taken prisoner in Gaza. According to US officials, at least 27 American citizens have reportedly died from the attack, and at least 17 more are reported missing. As a result, this tragedy has forced the United States to move its warships and aircraft to the region so they are prepared to supply Israel with the resources it needs to respond. We're surging additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish Iron Dome. We are going to make sure that it does not run out of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens, US President Joe Biden said 3 days after the attack. As of now, the US Central Command, CENTCOM, which is in charge of operations in the Middle East, has sent more fighter aircraft, such as Lockheed Martin F-16S, Boeing F-15S, and a US Navy aircraft carrier that is carrying 4 squadrons of Boeing F/A-18E/F Super Hornet strike fighters to the area. Another aircraft deployed is the A-10S, also known as Warthogs, which belong to the 23rd Air Expeditionary Wing at Moody Air Force Base, Georgia. For decades now, Warthogs have been an integral part of military operations in Central Command, as they have been a combat staple for attacking enemy tanks and ground positions throughout the Middle East. Ground forces rely on the A-10 to strafe and bomb tanks, armored vehicles, and other enemy targets, so they can safely maneuver around an area. In any case, during the Israeli-Hamas conflict, the A-10 was sent to the Middle East to discourage an Iranian assault in the area. The United States Air Force has about 350 Warthogs, but the number of A-10S sent to the Middle East is unknown. Whatever the case, the unbelievable military technology regarded as A-10 Warthogs was developed for the US Air Force by Fairchild Republic, an American manufacturer of aircraft and aerospace systems. It was designed with a singular purpose: to provide close air support to ground forces. It is the only production-built aircraft created specifically for close air support to have served with the United States Air Force. In any case, providing close air support isn't its only purpose, as its secondary mission is to coordinate other aircraft in attacks on ground targets, a role known as Forward Air Controller Airborne. Debuted over 50 years ago, the first US Air Force to receive the A-10 Warthog was the 355th Tactical Training Wing, located at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, Arizona, in March 1976. Shockingly, what has now become one of America's dangerous weapons was initially an unwelcome addition to many in the US Air Force, as most pilots did not want to switch to it because fighter pilots traditionally valued speed and appearance. The Gulf War in 1991 was the first time the A-10 was used in combat, with a total of 132 being deployed. During the war, it brought down 2 Iraqi helicopters with the GAU-8 cannon. Unfortunately, though, it suffered losses too. Anti-air artillery rounds struck 11 A-10S, and surface-to-air missiles brought down 4 A-10S during the war. 2 more A-10S and OA-10. As that had been damaged in combat, returned to base and were written off, and several other aircraft had been damaged in crash landings. The A-10 completed 8,100 sorties, launched 90% of the AGM-65 Maverick missiles fired throughout the conflict, and had a mission-capable rate of 95.7%. Between 1994 and 1995, A-10S fired approximately 10,030 rounds in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Another war in which the A-10 Warthog was heavily deployed was the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan. Remarkably, the A-10 Squadrons did not participate in the war against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, known as Operation Anaconda, until March 2002, when they were deployed to Pakistan and Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. Up to their departure last year, they fought the remaining Taliban and Al-Qaeda members while they were still in the nation. The aircraft was also utilized in Operation Iraqi Freedom. During the initial invasion of Iraq, A-10S had an 85% mission-capable rate and shot 311,597 rounds of 30 ammunition. 60 A-10S were used in early action in 2003. From the start of 2006 to October 2013, A-10S conducted 19% of close air support missions in Iraq and Afghanistan, which was more than the F-15E Strike Eagle and B-1B Lancer, but lower than the 33% flown by F-16S. Whatever the case, in action, it is a beauty to behold, as it is an amazing piece of war technology. The craft is unexpectedly built like a tank. However, despite its robust design, at low speeds and altitudes, it has superior maneuverability due to its enormous wing area, high wing aspect ratio, and wide ailerons. The A-10 Squadron wing allows short takeoffs and landings, permitting operations from advanced airfields close to the front lines, which is austere. It has a 1.5-mile visibility range, can function under 1,000-foot ceilings, and can linger for prolonged periods. Whatever the case, as was previously noted, it's designed like a tank, which means that it is designed to endure. And without a shred of doubt, the A-10 Squadron has exceptional survivability. The craft is battle-hardened as it is resistant to direct strikes from armor-piercing and high-explosive bullets up to 23 mm. The titanium armor of the aircraft protects both the pilot and the aircraft, enabling it to withstand hostile fire and make a safe return to base. This titanium armor has thicknesses varying from 0.5 to 1.5 inches. It was calculated by an analysis of likely trajectories and deflection angles, and it has been proven to withstand strikes from 23 mm cannon fire and some indirect impacts from 57 mm shell fragments. It's interesting to note that this technological marvel features self-sealing fuel cells and double redundant flight control systems, and is made to be rearmed, refueled, and serviced with the least amount of equipment. With limited facilities, the A-10's simple design enables maintenance at forward bases, and unexpectedly, a large number of the aircraft's components, including the engines, main landing gear, and vertical stabilizers, are interchangeable between the left and right sides of the aircraft. The sturdy landing gear, low-pressure tires, and large, straight wings allow operation from short, rough strips, even with a heavy aircraft ordnance load. It is important to note that the A-10 is equipped with one of the most powerful aircraft cannons ever flown, a 30 by 173 mm, 7-barrel, hydraulically operated Gatling-style autocannon, which fires cartridges the size of long-neck beer bottles, each weighing more than 1.5 pounds. This gun is larger than a Volkswagen Beetle, weighs over twice as much, and fires so fast that you can't hear the individual shots. It can fire 50 rounds in the first second and 65 or 70 rounds per second thereafter. It can fire up to 4,200 rounds in a minute, and when in flight, the cannon's accuracy allows it to aim 80% of its shells within a 40-foot circle at 4,000 feet. Whatever the case, this aircraft has undergone several changes over the years. Since entering service, it has received several upgrades, including the Pave Penny laser receiver pod in 1978. The laser pod carried on a pylon mounted below the right side of the cockpit, and a clear view of the ground of the A-10 allows the pilot to see which targets may be attacked by any laser-guided bombs they carry. Later, in the early 1990s, the A-10 began to receive the Low-Altitude Safety and Targeting Enhancement upgrade. The modification included an autopilot, a ground collision warning system, and computerized weapon pointing equipment. However, in 2010, the Low-Altitude Safety and Targeting Enhancement upgrade was replaced with the Integrated Flight and Fire Control Computer. Interestingly, from 2005 to June 2011, the entire fleet of 356 A-10S and OA-10S were modernized in the Precision Engagement Program, and redesignated A-10C improvements included smart bomb targeting, an enhanced fire control system, electronic countermeasures, and all-weather combat capability. The cockpit also received upgrades, with 2 multi-function displays and a HOTAS configuration that combined the F-15's throttle and the F-16's flight stick. Regretfully, the US Air Force plans to retire the A-10S after more than 40 years of operation. Even though it would take 15 years to build a new attack aircraft to replace the A-10 fully, the US Air Force said in 2015 that retiring the A-10S would save $3.7 billion between 2015 and 2019. Interestingly, their plans to retire the A-10S have been faced with serious opposition from Congress. Unfortunately, after many years of opposition, the USAF recently gained congressional permission to start retiring A-10S in 2023. It was even openly acknowledged by Air Force Chief of Staff Charles Brown that he anticipates the retirement of all A-10 by 2028 or 2029. For many years, A-10S served as a symbol of the war on terror because of their ability to target rebel locations with their cannon. Unfortunately, the A-10 is not a viable aircraft for its future force. As effective as they have proven over the years, A-10S are unlikely to be useful in any attempt to counter Russia's air force, which operates sophisticated fourth-generation fighters in the region. The average age of the A-10 fleet, which has been upgraded over the years, is more than 40 years old, and concerns about the aircraft's capacity to withstand current air forces and air defenses are a main driver of the Air Force's push to retire the aircraft. However, regardless of their survivability, they are being sent to the Middle East to complete strike missions against Hamas, ISIS militants, and Iranian-backed militant groups before their retirement. Whatever the case, before its retirement, the Loud jet, equipped with a rapid-fire cannon, has since arrived in the Middle East, adding to the Warthogs from the 75th Fighter Squadron that are already stationed there. The decision to send the US military assets to the region was taken to discourage Hezbollah, the Lebanese militant group, and Iran from trying to escalate the conflict, and to show support for Israel, which has had more than 1,200 citizens killed and others taken hostage and brought to Gaza. For context, it has been more than 20 days since the surprise attack by the Palestinian militant group Hamas on Israeli communities near the Gaza Strip. In retaliation, more than 8,000 Palestinians, including 2,704 children in Gaza, have been killed in air and artillery strikes carried out by the Israeli military. Sadly, all of these come after decades of relentless and deadly conflict between Israel and Palestine. On several occasions this year, hundreds of Israeli soldiers raided the Palestinian city of Jenin, and a Palestinian man killed 7 people outside a synagogue in East Jerusalem. In 2022, Israeli forces killed at least 166 Palestinians in the Israeli-occupied West Bank after a series of terrorist attacks in Israeli cities. In 2021, the Israeli police raided the third holiest site in Islam, the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, ultimately setting off an 11-day war between Israel and Hamas that killed more than 200 Palestinians and more than 10 Israelis. Following the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers by Hamas in 2014, Israel launched rocket strikes. It launched attacks from Gaza, resulting in the deaths of over 1,881 Palestinians and over 60 Israelis. In December 2008, after rocket firing from Giza, Israel launched a ground battle against Hamas, killing 1,200 Palestinians and 13 Israelis. Every single year, there has been a constant war between the Israelis and Palestine, resulting in thousands of deaths, and all these deadly conflicts can be traced back to May 14, 1948, when Israel declared itself an independent state. Almost immediately after Israel declared itself an independent state, the armies of Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria invaded, sparking the First Arab-Israeli War. Israel came out victorious and got more control of an even larger portion of territory that did not include the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. As a result, in what they call the Nakba, or disaster, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were forced to flee or were expelled from their homeland, and for several decades now, it has been a succession of deadly conflicts between both factions with no set date for reconciliation. Nonetheless, these recent attack by Hamas has now forced the Israeli military to remain hell-bent on destroying Hamas's military and governmental capabilities completely. According to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Hamas is doomed. We have already killed thousands of terrorists, and this is only the beginning. Simultaneously, we are preparing for a ground invasion. I will not elaborate on when, how, or how many. I will also not elaborate on the various calculations we are making, which the public is mostly unaware of, and that is how things should be. We will get to the bottom of what happened on the southern border around Gaza. This debacle will be investigated. We will exact the full price for those murderers from Hamas-ISIS, Mr. Netanyahu said. So far, Israel has agreed to a request to let the United States deploy its air defenses to the region before an anticipated ground invasion of Gaza to protect its troops serving in Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates from missiles and rockets. The military and other officials of the United States fear that if Israel begins its ground invasion of the Palestinian region held by Hamas, militant groups will strike their forces, and they have good reason to be concerned because, since the start of the Gaza war, proxies backed by Iran have carried out at least 13 strikes, hurting at least 20 troops in Syria and 10 US personnel in Iraq in separate incidents. In any case, Washington has given Israel extraordinary support, not only out of fear of retaliation against their troops, but also because they are allies, and Iran-backed proxies would not be happy to have an encounter with the A-10 Warthogs. Nevertheless, the arrival of the A-10 Warthog comes after American military advisors landed in Israel to consult with Israeli Defense Forces leaders about rescuing Americans and other hostages being held in Gaza. Interestingly, John Kirby, a spokesman for the National Security Council, has acknowledged that although American forces are in the region, they would not be taking any direct action. The Israelis have made it very clear that they don't want foreign troops on their soil, that they want to prosecute these operations on their own. The Israelis have made it clear that they would not welcome foreign involvement in any event, John Kirby said. In any case, the A-10 is sure to be useful in the coming days as the US and Middle Eastern allies have an understanding of how important the dangerous aircraft is. Back in January 2023, the US sought to deter Iran and reassure its Middle Eastern allies when they conducted a large-scale air exercise, such as Juniper Oak, with Israel, that involved 100 American aircraft, including the A-10 Squadron. The exercise, which was the largest US-Israel partnered exercise in history, was intended to show that the United States could quickly send vast amounts of weaponry to the region while also turning its attention from the Middle East to the Pacific and Europe. Combat search and rescue, precise long-range artillery, close air support, integrated bomber and fighter missions, naval operations involving the George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group, and Space Force assets were all incorporated in the intricate drill. Lieutenant General Alexis G. Grinkwich, the commander of Air Forces Central, emphasized during the exercise that the United States and Israel are collaborating to improve force defense, and that one of their efforts is to ascertain how the A-10 may be used in the region. Nonetheless, with the Pentagon prioritizing the Middle East at the moment, the U.S. Central Command needs additional air assets, and the influx of A-10s in the region will enable them to meet its requirement of 2.5 squadrons, with a squadron in CENTCOM comprising around 12 aircraft. Unfortunately, there are doubts over whether America can back Israel and Ukraine at the same time. However, Pentagon officials have downplayed any worries that American forces and equipment might be spread too thin given the conflicts in Israel and Ukraine, where Biden has committed more than $44 billion in equipment since the Russian invasion in early 2022. Put simply, we are the strongest nation in the world with the most combat-credible military. We are capable of supporting Ukraine and Israel in their hours of need. We feel that we can and must do both. The cost of inaction would be much higher. The United States can walk and chew gum at the same time, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said. The Defense Secretary emphasized that America is the strongest nation in the world and, as such, has deployed a massive amount of force to make it very clear that the United States stands with Israel and send a strong message to other countries and groups that they better understand the full capability of the U.S. military we have put in the Eastern Mediterranean. Whatever the case, the war in the Middle East sure needs the presence of aircraft and military firepower with unmatched capabilities like the A-10 Warthog.